Back on Inside Tennessee. Hope your Sunday morning is starting well, and thank you for starting it with us. Former Knox County Mayor Mike Ragsdale with us, former Knox County Commissioner John Griess, also one of our guests. John?
Just a little point of clarification since Bud is not here. I asked him if he could be here. He said, I can't because I'm involved in this litigation. I just want to make that clear. We did reach out to him. He has said in the past, earlier this year, he's indicated that from his perspective, he was raising the question about use of taxpayer money in terms of the compensation. So just that's where he's coming from.
Law Director Bud Armstrong.
Just for one quick question, John, did he indicate who his client was in this?
That's a great question. I think that question, John, has changed.
Well, so he has more than one client?
No, you can't.
That's what I want.
I can help you with that.
Yeah,
so where has this $657,000 gone? I assume it's to pay other lawyers?
Well, not to be rhetorical, but that's the $657,000 question. And I'm assuming that that's where it's been spent as well.
He's hired outside counsel to represent the pension board or the mayor?
Him.
Oh, represent him.
Oh, wait a minute. So that's to defend the law director?
Mm-hmm.
That money?
Yeah. I don't know how much if that was all.
I don't know how many. I don't know what the bills are.
The law director has counsel. Does the mayor have counsel at this point?
No.
Does the commission have counsel?
I don't think so.
I thought the law director was there.
My point exactly.
And that's to the point that you made in the earlier block, Mayor, and that's one thing I want to talk about. How do you move forward from this? You were saying, listen, the mayor needs their own counsel, the law directors their counsel, and the commission, it would be helpful if they had their own counsel, and there have been arguments that school board needs its own counsel. How can they all be represented by a law director? Doesn't that present immediate conflicts?
Well, and as Dennis alluded to, you can't. Mm-hmm. And so many times in the past, you've had to, in addition to an elected law director and staff, you have to go out and get outside counsel to represent certain situations. It would be much easier if you just had, everyone had their own legal counsel. Some of it wouldn't even have to be full-time. It could be just someone who has a practice and on the side deals with a specific piece of government. And I think that would resolve a large part of this issue.
So how does the county, if that indeed makes sense to a majority of people, how does the county move forward with something like that? Is it up to commission to do that, or where do you start?
It's a charter amendment, which is an onerous process.
But talk about that, how you change
well,
the charter.
I do not want to pretend like I know anything I'm talking about, generally speaking.
I served on the Charter Commission.
I think I appointed you.
You did appoint me to the Charter Commission.
We did, and there's a charter review process that comes up every, I think, 5 or 6 years, something to that effect. And there are a couple of ways to get items to the ballot. A county commission can ask item be placed on the ballot with, I think, a 2/3 majority vote. With the current size commission would be 8, I suspect. And then citizens can have a petition to put items on the ballot. But in this particular case, I think it would be wise to look at, last time there were a group of elected officials lumped together and to move away from electing them and to appointing them, and I think it'd be best if you voted on them individually. And we as a democratic society love to vote for people, and I fall in that category too. However, with some positions, it just really doesn't make a great deal of sense, in my opinion.
The city of Knoxville runs fine with Charles Swanson as the law director, and he serves at the pleasure of Mayor O'Hara, does he not?
I think he does.
I think he does.
Well, but Dennis, the city of Knoxville doesn't do a whole lot relative to Knox County. Okay, no school system, no jail system, no public health system. There's a lot of work to cover if you're the law director or a lawyer for the county executive.
And John makes a good point. I have to weigh in on that too. In addition to no schools, health department, jails, you don't have public libraries, air quality control. That list goes on. And that's not knocking those who serve in the city of Knoxville. They were great partners when I was mayor. I couldn't have had a better partner than early on Victor Ashe, then later now Governor Haslam.
And it may just create the circumstance where you have more opportunities for conflicts, is what you're saying. Correct. At the county level.
True, and maybe more need for legal representation as well.
I want to look big picture quickly. John Griess, you were on commission when it was a lot larger. It's now at 11. What do you make of the change in that side of commission and how the government's functioning with the smaller commission?
I have 2 or 3 thoughts. First of all, it doesn't look to me like they have much fun. Okay.
And we
had fun. I mean, I can tell you some stories sometime about the fun we had.
Will you tell them on the air, John?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Second of all, I don't like the reduced size of commission. I mean, as it is in a district now, most people won't know one person, but the odds of knowing 2 people increased slightly. So if you needed help or wanted to make your opinion known, you'd have at least 2 people to talk to. So I don't like that. And third, the thing that I notice about commission is that there is no sense of history because they're term limited. You look at the faces on commission, they haven't been there long. So you start talking about a topic like pension boards or pension or the sheriff, and nobody has any recollection. There's no Wanda Moody or Frank Luthold type person that can say, hey, back in 1988, this is where the genesis of this idea came from. So the historical perspective is gone. Those are my quick 3 thoughts on that.
Mayor Ragsdale, what's your impression stepping away from it and looking back?
Well, as a mayor, sometimes, particularly in my second term, I would have loved the aspect of having 11. In my first term, 19 was just fine. And but as a former county commissioner as well, John's right. I think it's very difficult in a part-time job to represent these large districts, and 2 of the commissioners are elected county-wide. That becomes almost a full-time position in my mind as you would have as a legislator. John and I served in a district that had was incredibly large, and there were 3 of us that represented it. So you have situations like that. I think if you get too small, it really sounds good, but I think it puts a really tough burden on county commissioners.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about voter turnout. These gentlemen have run for office before and know what it's like to have their name on the ballot. We'll talk about who's voting right after this.